Good day, everyone. My name is Marian Flores, and today I will be presenting a timeline and analysis of language education policies in the Philippines. This presentation will explore the key historical periods, examine the significance policy, and reflect on their impact on language and education in our country. So let's start with the pre-Spanish period. So, during this time, native languages such as Tagalog, Cebuano, and Ilocano flourished without foreign influence. Oral traditions played a key role in education such as storytelling and communal activities. For example, the Baybayin script. Many early Filipinos were literate in Baybayin, a pre-colonial writing system which was used for trade and documentation. Next is the oral traditions. Stories, epics, and legal traditions were passed down in various native languages, reinforcing linguistic diversity. Next is the Spanish colonial period. The Spanish introduced Spanish as the primary language of education and governance. The Education Act of 1863 required missionaries to teach Spanish to Filipinos. However, native languages were still used for religious instruction because only about 10% of Filipino could speak Spanish fluently. These are the significant policies or events that shape language education in the Philippines in Spanish colonial period. The first is the 1603 Dual Language Decree. It aimed to establish Spanish as the primary language of administration and education while still allowing the use of native languages. Second is in 1634, King Felipe IV of Spain issued a royal decree mandating the universal instruction of the Spanish language in the Philippines. This decree aimed to teach the native population to speak and understand Spanish for better governance and religious instruction by the Spanish colonizers. Now let's talk about the American colonial period and the significant policies that shaped the language education in the Philippines. So, with the arrival of Americans in 1898, English became the medium of instruction through the Education Act of 1901. The policy aimed to modernize the education and promote English proficiency. So, the 1901 Education Act number 74 was significant policy implemented during the American colonial period that laid the foundation for the modern public education system in the Philippines. The 1901 Education Act number 74 goal is to establish a free and secular public school system in the Philippines, modeled after the American education system, and to make English as the primary medium of instructions in school. The second one is the Monroe Educational Survey was conducted in 1925 by American educators to assess the effectiveness of the public education system in the Philippines under U.S. colonial rule. The survey was named after Paul Monroe, an American educator who led the study. So next is the Commonwealth and Japanese occupation. During the Commonwealth period, there was a push to develop Filipino as a national language. However, during the Japanese occupation, 1941 to 1945, Japanese was promoted alongside Filipino to replace English. So, the 1935 Commonwealth Constitution marked a significant step toward the development of a national language for the Philippines. So, the goal of it is to establish a unifying national language that would foster national identity and unity. However, the Commonwealth Act number 184 was enacted in 1936 to establish the National Language Institute, or the Suriano Wikang Pambansa. The institute was tasked with studying and selecting a national language for the Philippines. So eventually it chose Tagalog as the basis for the national language, which later evolved into a Filipino. So the last is the post-war and republic era. The 1973 and 1987 Constitution emphasized bilingual education, leading to the bilingual education policy of 1974, which established both Filipino and English as medium education. Now let's answer the reflection question. So the number one is, how did the colonial history of the Philippines shape its current language education policies? So colonial rule introduced Spanish, English, and Japanese, shaping the multilingual nature of Philippine education. Second, what role does language play in national identity and cultural preservation in the Philippines? So Filipino unites the country, while local languages preserve cultural heritage. Number three, how do you think the mother tongue-based multilingual education, or the MTB-MLA policy, addresses the challenges of linguistic diversity in the Philippines? So, it allows children to learn in their native language, fostering better understanding. Number four is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using Filipino and English as the primary languages of instruction in schools? First is the advantage. English opens global opportunities, while Filipino strengthens unity. The disadvantages is non-Tagalog speakers struggle with Filipino as the national language. The last one is the, how can the Philippines balance the need for global competitiveness through English with the preservation of local languages? By implementing policies that strengthen both English proficiency and local language development. That's all for today's presentation, and thank you for listening.